Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Boulder on this late summer morning. My name is Ray Knutson, and I'll be your worship leader for today's service. We welcome all at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Boulder. If you are a visitor, feel free to fill out our visitor form, which is posted in the chat, to connect with one of our friendly folks from the Connections Ministry. In addition, our church website has a great deal of information about the church and its activities. Be sure to check it out by following the link in the chat. And today is a very special occasion as we welcome Reverend Jeremy Nickel to our church as our new interim minister. Our board president, Chris Zanoni, would also like to add a few words. Chris?
Good morning. A little over 6 months ago, Reverend Jeremy Nickel visited our church on the 23rd of February exactly to be a speaker. Not long after that, it feels like a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, but not really that long after that, we learned from Reverend Eric Posa that for health reasons, he requested that we not renew his second year of his contract. So we had to begin the search for someone to replace him for the year in between then and when we find our new settled minister. Our leadership development committee was hard at work finding candidates for the ministerial search committee. And then COVID-19 came on the scene and turned our world upside down. Over just a few days, our amazing staff created virtual online worship. UUA told us to expect that we would probably be worshiping that way through May of 2021. We were facing the prospect of having to create a second search committee in a very, very short time frame. So how do we get creative at a time like this when so many things were happening? We talked to some folks at the UUA and just look for some different options. We had heard several comments from folks who said, what about that minister who visited us back in February? David Hughes reached out to Reverend Jeremy and to see if he was, as we like to say, willing and able, and it turned out that he was. David, Tony Piwanka, and I, as the executive committee, did the preliminary interview of Reverend Jeremy, and we were wowed. One of the phrases that stuck out for me was in one of his bio pieces that talked about how he was comfortable at the intersection of spirituality and technology. And boy, were we ready for that. He also brings many other gifts. We had spoken with some references who gave him glowing comments. And he's from the Mission Hills UU Church in California, which has a relationship with our church through the Leap of Faith program. We felt like we had received a gift from the heavens. I'm not sure how UUs talk about that, but that's what it turned out to be. 8 days after the initial inquiry and the board approving that we proceed with this, Reverend Jeremy signed a consulting ministerial agreement with us. He's currently at 60% of his time. He is, so Monday was his official first day. I just wanted you to know the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey used to say, that so many things were going on, happening, and we were able to get such a wonderful outcome in that particular area. So I am delighted and honored to introduce our new consulting lead minister, Reverend Jeremy Nickel.
All right. Thank you, Chris.
You bet.
Thank you, everyone. It's been just a really wonderful first week. A little bit like drinking from a fire hose, as they say, but really wonderful to start seeing some faces and talking to you all. So it's great to be here and looking forward to seeing more of you soon. With that being said, I will call us to worship for this Sunday service. In the quiet of this morning, let us breathe together. In the stillness of this moment, may we pause together to mark not just another day, but this moment, this beautiful, precious, once-in-a-lifetime moment. In this present moment, all is possible, but nothing is promised. May we bend our backs, may we move as one into the most beautiful possibilities that lie ahead. The path will not always be clear. Our steps, not always perfectly ordered, but so long as love is our guide, we will find our way. May we give thanks for this precious day. Amen and Ashe. Please join me in worship.
Precious day, for all gathered here.
have a personal chalice or candle near your computer, get ready to light it as we hear our chalice lighter speak. We invite you to type into the chat box where your chalice is lit, the street or neighborhood, or what city if you're joining us from outside Boulder. And now, I'm pleased to introduce today's chalice lighter, Reed Bailey.
Thank you, Ray. My name is Reed Bailey, a longtime member of UUCB. And today I'll just give you a thumbnail sketch of my off-map journey to UUCB. Turns out I was born during the Second World War and grew up in Salt Lake City as a Mormon, in a Mormon family. And there are lots of things I liked about the Mormon Church, including they really were big on honesty, at taking care of the poor and the sick, not smoking, not drinking. That was okay with me. Good family values. But then came the 60s and the assassination of Martin Luther King, and I ran head on into really angry racism. And I had a hard time figuring out, in fact, never did, how you can be a saint and a racist at the same time. So this was, so from there, I decided that I needed to get out of Utah because I was having some other issues with the church also. I wasn't really big into the mythology. Moved to Colorado Springs, and at that time, my marriage wasn't doing real well either. And so in 75, actually 74, I left both the Mormon church and my marriage dissolved, and I moved to Boulder. And yep, I was off math. And as Jeremy's going to talk about, there were a lot of unknown unknowns in my life. I didn't know where I was going, where I was going to end up, but I knew I missed a loving community, spiritual community of like-minded people. In 76, a friend of mine, some of you old timers like me may remember Steve Adeve Johnston, invited me to come to the UUCB in June of 76, and I've been coming ever since. And what I found was a community of like-minded, loving people who had through a very large circle of inclusiveness, as opposed to the very narrow circle of inclusiveness that the Mormon Church created. So I felt very comfortable, and I grew a lot. I was president, treasurer for many years, buildings and grounds for 20 years, was also chair of the social justice, and I grew a lot. I learned a lot. So for me, not only the people, and I was going to talk about all the people I know, but I know that there's way too many of them, and I would embarrass them and they would embarrass me. So I decided I better not list them all. I grew, and I needed to come up with a set of values, and I love the 7 principles, but I wanted something a little more detailed that I could use for my verbal arguments against putting the 10 commandments, as Republican legislatures in this state like to do, in all schools and public buildings. So I came up about 18 years ago with a 10 value set, and they really are values that I have learned from the church, values I've learned from my men's group. By the way, I really enjoy the men's group in the church and highly advise all men to take a look at it. In any case, so I came up with these values, and many of them you know them because you saw them published in the paper essentially 2.5 years ago, maybe 3 now. And there are 10 of them for obvious reasons. For sake of time, I'm just going to read the keywords to each of the 10, and I just want to read the detail on 2 of them because I think they're really important for today's world. Again, these are my values, not Boston's values, okay? And again, I feel like I've learned and was able to articulate this from the people I know at the church and the teachings that I have gotten from many ministers at the church. Number 1 is democracy. Number 2 is the golden rule. Number 3 is justice. Number 4 is spirituality. Number 5 is family and diversity. Number 6 is critical thinking. Number 7 is peace. Number 8 is sustainability. Number 9 is positive thinking. And number 10 is gratitude. And just to keep things short, I want to read the one on justice, because that's what really threw me off map with the Mormon Church. And this is what I say under justice. We value the inherent worth of every human being and support communities, societies, companies, and governments that work for social justice and eliminate discrimination of the marginalized and less fortunate by enacting just laws and using our collective wealth to enhance the common good of all Americans and all people of the world. So that's one of the ones that I think is applicable for now and got me back on map. And then sustainability, I think, is also a big one that I've learned through the Unitarian Church. We, like the Earth, are made of stardust, and we must protect our unique spaceship Earth by creating scientifically based, sustainable economies, preserving the Earth's limited environmental resources for future generations in order to avoid inflicting needless ecosystem suffering on ourselves and other species that make up the web of life. So in any case, this is one of the gifts I got from being a member of UUCB. I know a lot of you read this because it was in the paper. If anybody's interested, shoot me an email and I'll send you a copy. So with that, I'm going to light the chalice and wish you all good health in these days of coronavirus. Okay, here's my chalice. Be well. Thank you, Ray.
Thank you, Reed. May the many chalice lights now shining across our community inspire us with the knowledge that even in our individual homes and locations, we are together with others in our shared hopes and faith. We now invite all those gathered in our various locations to rise in body or in spirit and join together in fellowship and community as we all say aloud our congregation's covenant. We gather
in fellowship, speak truth to each other, reach out and touch one another, share with each other, and seek by. So be it. So be it.
Video.
Sounds like some people need to mute themselves still. Getting a little feedback. Thank you so much, everyone. Hard to have a beautiful meditative moment with feedback, isn't it? But such are the times we are in now. Thank you, everyone, for getting our technology in place. And I invite you to gently close your eyes, to place your feet comfortably and firmly on the ground, and to join me in the magic and miracle of silence and breath. As your eyes gently close, let's spend a moment together just noticing your breath as it moves gently in through your nose or mouth, as it makes its way through your body, back up and out again. May it be so. In this deep connection with all of life, let us tune into our own joys and concerns, What's on your mind and in your heart today? In the quiet of your own thoughts, I invite you to lift up all that weighs on you. Your grief, your worry and pain, anxiety or frustrations, whatever it is, let us hold each other in silence. Now let us turn our minds and hearts to those we love, holding them with love, acknowledging their painful challenges and sufferings. And I invite you now to share your concerns in the chat box. I'll let that go for a few moments and I'll summarize a few of them. But feel free to share with your community of love and accountability those concerns you hold on your heart by chatting them right now. Today, in our container of love and care, we hold concern for everyone who is lonely through this isolating time. We send love and healing to George and Mary, for our country, for Sharon L. We know many people in the world are hurting, not sure where the next paycheck will come from. There's a lot of uncertainty in the world, and with our love, we can hold it, all of it at once. Concern about the climate, about gun violence and systemic racism. We hold it all. Please continue posting if you wish. We offer love and light to all those who are suffering. But also, please bring to mind the things for which you are grateful and bring you joy. And I also invite you to post those joyful moments, those celebrations we should note, in the chat box now as well. With joy, we celebrate recent birthdays for Corbin and Billy's mom, for singing, for music, for beauty, for joy in the changing seasons. Boy, do we have a whipsaw of weather change coming our way. Grateful to family and friends, Mary's birthday, Nina's daughter Grace, who got engaged. How exciting. A circle supper last night at Artist Point. Thanks for the invite. That sounded like a lot of fun. Hope I can join next time. Thank you for all that was shared into this container of love, for all these blessings and concerns, as well as those that remain silently on our hearts. We hold this compassionate space with love. And I thank you for all the ways that we continue to bless each other.
The reading by Sister Joyce Rupp. Old maps no longer work. I keep pulling it out, the old map of my inner path. I squint closely at it, trying to see some hidden road that maybe I've missed. But there's nothing there now, except some well-traveled paths. They have seen my footsteps often, held my laughter, caught my tears. I keep going over the old map, but now the roads lead nowhere. A meaningless wilderness where life is dull and futile. Toss away the old map, she says. You must be kidding, I reply. She looks at me with Sarah eyes and repeats, toss it away. It's of no use where you're going. I have to have a map, I cry. Even if it takes me nowhere, I can't be without direction. But you are without direction, she says. So why not let go? Be free. So there I am, tossing away the old map, sadly, fearfully, putting it behind me. Whatever will I do? Wails my security. Trust me, says my midlife soul. No map, no specific directions, no this way ahead or take a left. How will I know where to go? How will I find my way? No map. But then my midlife soul whispers, if there was a time before maps, when pilgrims traveled by the stars, it is time for the pilgrim in me to travel in the dark, to learn to read the stars that shine in my soul. I will walk deeper into the dark of my night. I will wait for the stars, trust their guidance, and let the light be enough for me.
Well, hello, everyone. It's wonderful to finally be here in this moment with all of you. I didn't think I'd ever get a chance to come out of retirement at such a young age, so appreciate you giving me that opportunity. And thank you for the very warm, if safely physically distanced welcome that I've received this week. I don't need to remind you what a strange 6 months it has been since the last time I spoke to you all, as Chris said, at the end of February. It's been an extremely trying time for me and my family. And I know it has been for every single one of you in your own ways. My family spent the first 4 months in a pod of 3 people, 2 dogs and 2 cats. And while we made sure to get up into the hiking trails above our house and around our neighborhood with the dogs, our world became very small. And somewhere around midsummer, we were fully stir crazy in a way I had never felt before. Can anyone relate to that? I use one of these to just kind of say in a Zoom, I'm with you, man. Yeah, my world got small. And I'm guessing I'm not alone on that one. So we turned to Mother Nature in my family once again as our only refuge, as I know so many of you did this summer, looking for some kind of escape from this strange life. This was, of course, no sacrifice for me, as one of my favorite summer activities has always been to take a good hike out into the wilderness. And as I've gotten older and more ambitious, my hiking trips have evolved, at times into weeks-long adventures in the woods. Like many of you, I find great peace in disconnecting from all that competes for my attention, heading out into nature and unplugging. Most of my more ambitious forays were well planned and prepared for, but one of my most memorable outdoor adventures came about through a completely different set of circumstances. My final summer of seminary, I was in Berkeley, California. It was 2004 or 5, and I spent a lot of time exploring Northern California with another seminary student who was the exact opposite of me. On the spur of the moment, he would throw a sleeping bag and a few random items of food into the back of his car and take off for a week of tromping around the wilderness, as he liked to call it. He was a live by the seat of his pants kind of guy, and I found traveling with him to be equal parts exhilarating and terrifying. Anyone else have a friend like that? I think some of us need people like that in our lives to push us a little bit. And that was how I found myself with a hastily prepared hiking pack standing in front of the ranger station outside the less well-known eastern, non-coastal side of Big Sur State Park. My companion strode confidently up to the ranger and inquired about the best hiking trails up and over to the Pacific Ocean. A there and back journey we hoped to spend the next few days making. The ranger informed us that she had personally never been farther than the loop trail around the small campgrounds we stood in, but then excitedly revealed that she had constructed a map of the trails we would encounter based on interviews with hikers that had ended their trip here. Now, understand that normally I would spend weeks preparing for such a hike, looking at maps, talking to people at my local REI, carefully portioning out food for every stop. But I had signed up for a very different experience, so I choose to go with it. I should have known then what I was in for, but naively, I felt confident in the veracity of this critical information. Within the first hour of our hike, it was obvious the map bore little to no resemblance to the actual trails we encountered. We had to admit that we were hiking without any real understanding of where we were or where we were headed. We were off the map. And perhaps we should have turned back, but I'm guessing you know we didn't. We were out looking for adventure, so we figured we would push on. And at first, it was totally exhilarating for me to experience such a different way to hike. And I realized that in order to be lost, you had to want it to know where you were, and that wasn't really a need I had, at least yet. So we stopped worrying about that useless map, just like our reading. We tossed it away, well, probably burned it, and we just stopped worrying about it. Turned our attention to the sun and its movements. We tapped into deep memories about where moss grew on trees and the wisdom of following rivers and water. And for a few days, we did great, eventually popping out of the woods, not on the Pacific Ocean, but rather into the middle of an incredible hot springs community, started by the Grateful Dead, right smack in the middle of the most gorgeous mountain forest I'd ever seen, where we were invited to stop over and rest for a day. So we did, congratulating ourselves on a job well done. Now, overconfident in our abilities, we pushed off. Not back the way we came, but through a new route we were sure would circle us back quickly and efficiently to our car. The next afternoon, after several wrong turns and ill-advised off-trail forays, my hiking buddy very quickly became violently ill. Unable to hold any food or carry any weight, he literally crawled the final few hundred yards we hiked that day. And that night, I went to sleep as anxious and worried as I ever had. Where even were we? Now it was official. Since I wanted to know and didn't, we were lost. The following morning, he was still quite sick and very weak. I took his pack. We managed to make a miraculous amount of progress in the right direction, allowing us to somehow successfully hike out to our car the next day, feeling like we had received about 500% more adventure than we had bargained for. It was a hard week of hiking in the end, but it also taught me a lot about myself, what I could handle, but also about what it's like to be without a map, both figuratively and literally. And I hate to do this to you, but I'm reminded of my favorite quote from one of my least favorite people, then Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld, who is probably not frequently quoted in Unitarian Universalist sermons, so listen up. As he so eloquently put it, as we know, there are no knowns. There are things we know we know. We also know there are known unknowns. That is to say, we know there are some things we do not know. But there are also unknown unknowns. The ones we don't know, we don't know. And if one looks throughout the history of our country and other free countries, it is the latter category that tend to be the difficult ones. And well, gee, isn't that the convoluted truth of the matter, sir? Unknown unknowns are really hard because we have absolutely no preparation, no mental or physical map to consult, no helpful past experiences to compare it to. We are seemingly lost, which can be scary, and that fear and anxiety was exactly what Mr. Rumsfeld was going for. But I'm here to tell you there's another side of that coin too. Being off the map can be freeing. It can create space for new ideas and new growth that wasn't possible on the old map. And that is exactly where I think I join you in your congregational story, in a moment in time without a map, but full of possibilities. And thinking about this moment in this manner has helped me shape how I'm approaching my time with you. The first thing it tells me is that we need to get back to the map soon. Seriously, or else we risk falling into the kind of exhaustion that took down my buddy when we were hiking. Anyone else feeling a little exhausted out there already? I know I am. And along with the exec council and other leaders, we've begun to do that. But I also don't want to lose sight of the other side of that coin either. The fact that this moment without a map can be a time of energy release, of new ideas, of throwing away outdated things that aren't serving us, and returning to old memories of what really matters. And first, I'm sure you're all wondering what the plan to get us back to the map will look like. And while it's too early to be 100% specific, I mean, I've been here less than a week, all right? The guiding principle is that in a time like this, We need to admit that we can't do everything just like we have been. And so we're going to identify the most important activities, the really critical ones that are at the core of who we are, and we're going to focus on those. When I was speaking to Beth about this the other day, she shared a perfectly apt metaphor with me. When the body is in crisis, it naturally reprioritizes our blood flow and vital life force to the most essential parts of our body, our hearts, our brains, and our lungs, in order to get us through. And that is precisely what we're going to do this year. I've already started a process with the exec team and staff, and will soon add other key stakeholders to reshape our focus and budget for the year with the explicit intention of having this congregation ready to hit the ground running in a more normal capacity, just as your new settled minister is joining you a little less than a year from now. This will mean that not everything you expected out of this congregational year will come true and happen. There is a real loss in this time, and I don't want to skip over that and pretend it's not part of this. And I promise I will make space for us to name and mourn those losses as needed. But I really believe that if we approach the year in this manner, we can flip a difficult and uncomfortable time into a true opportunity to make changes that have been needed for a while. So that's the hard part. But as I said, there's another side to this as well. With loss comes new birth and new possibility. So I'm also excited to have a lot of fun with you all reinventing what we do together. Once we let go of what we can't do right now and embrace our incredible creativity, I know there's so much we can do together. And I know my reputation is kind of as the tech guy, but I'm not just talking tech solutions here. We're going to explore sending home supplies for a more participatory worship experience. We'll continue to look at what we can do with small groups in safely marked spaces outside. We'll take on shared social justice projects in ways that we haven't before, and we're going to have some fun doing it, I promise. And then, one day, that moment will come. I tell you, I will never forget the feeling of seeing the ranger station as we finally and pathetically fell out of the forest back where we started. I was beyond relieved or elated. I was in ecstasy. We had definitively survived. We weren't simply back on the map. We were survivors, and we knew even right then in that exhausted moment that we were stronger for it, that we had learned important lessons that would serve us well going forward. And I imagine that day for us. Having been through this off the map time, how amazing it will feel to return to our physically undistanced lives again, to return to full RE classrooms and Sunday services, to hug each other, to sneeze or cough in public without feeling like a pariah. Ooh, I'm looking forward to that. That time will come. And if we use this time right, I really believe this community and each of us as individuals can be stronger for it. May it be so. Amen and Ashe. Thank you for welcoming me, and I look forward to what unfolds in front of us. Please enjoy this musical response.
When you make a donation to UUCB, you are practicing generosity and supporting the work we do together to create love, justice, and peace in the world. Your generosity is vital in helping us provide pastoral care, programming, and connection during these uncertain times. This month is the beginning of our 2020-2021 Share the Plate program, which begins with the Safe House Progressive Alliance for Nonviolence, or SPAN. SPAN is a human rights organization committed to ending violence against adults, youth, and children through support, advocacy, education, and community organizing. Here is one person's reflection on the help they received from SPAN. I am so grateful for SPAN and their Lawyers for Victims program. SPAN was available to support and assist me throughout the entire process of getting protection to stay safe from my abuser. I received help with a civil protection order and navigating the court system, as well as emotional support in the courtroom. Further, an advocate sat with me and my mother while at the hearing, which gave me more strength and courage. I felt great relief knowing that I was not alone throughout this difficult process. The assistance I received truly helped me in getting my life back and regaining personal power over my physical and emotional safety and the safety of my family. I never dreamed I would end up in an abusive relationship, causing me to lose my job and forcing me to move to another state. I cannot overstate my gratitude for programs like this being available to help people in need. You can make a donation using the link posted in your chat or by sending a check to UUCB. Please be as generous as you can. We will now receive the offering. Thank you for your gifts of support for our beloved community.
We will walk together, you and I, walk together hand in hand. Come on, we will walk together, heads held high. We will you and I shall together hand in hand. Come on, we will shout together, heads held high. We will reach the promised land. Come, my friend, I see a brighter day, where freedom rings for everyone. Come along and we will find the way to justice rising like the sun. To justice rising like the sun.
All right. Well, this is my first time doing an online service like this, so I look forward to seeing some of you soon in the breakout rooms. I understand we'll learn about shortly. I have my chalice here. As we prepare to return to the world, I invite you to remember these words from Henry David Thoreau, who said, "Not until we are lost do we begin to understand ourselves." Unquote. May we yet find deeper understanding in this perplexing time. May it be so. Ashe. See you soon.
Go your way in peace, wander as you may. Blessed is the path you take, may love guide you on your way. Go your way in peace, wander as you may. Blessed is the path you take, may love guide you on your way.
We invite you to stay with us in our Zoom rooms for a time of online fellowship and discussion. Jim is here to tell us how this is going to work today.
Hello, everybody. So a little bit of a wrinkle as from usual. So we are going to have breakout rooms for fellowship, as mentioned in the letter we sent from the Board of Trustees. We are also going to have our first bi-weekly Your Board is Listening session. So here's how it's going to work. If you want none of the above, go ahead and exit. Otherwise, in a second, I'm going to assign you randomly to rooms, but when it asks you to join, just cancel that or ignore and stay in the main lobby, and then we'll take this group into the Board is Listening session with Chris, myself, David, Sharman, if they're around. So just sit tight, and I'm going to attempt to do that. All right. Okay, here we go. All right. We'll just hold on for a minute here while those who want the fellowship rooms can join those. And then those who are left will have a Board is Listening session. I'm just going to look to make sure nobody got completely stranded. Great. Okay, well, we have a very large group, so welcome everybody. Looks like there are about a little over 20 of us here, 20 sessions. So to start out with, Chris, jump in if you want to add anything. What we really wanted to do, as we mentioned in the letter, is make sure there's a lot going on and make sure that we're having an opportunity to both communicate better and communicate what's happening with the Board of Trustees, as well as hear your questions and concerns and try to address those or take items that we can get back to you on. So I guess we'll just start with kind of open questions if you have any, and if we have too much silence, we may throw a few back out at you. So I think that's it to start. Chris, did you want to add anything?
No,
Great.
that's good for it.
Yeah, so go ahead and unmute yourself if you have any thoughts or questions. I know Steve and Heidi must have one. There you go. I guess right. Yeah, thanks.
Well, we were just saying, you mentioned something about getting something from the Board of Trustees. Neither of our emails included anything like that.
We got the survey. Is that what you're referring to?
No.
That's interesting. Amy should have sent, like you normally receive, an email from UUCB that kind of has the headers, and it was a letter from the board. Did anyone on the call receive that? Okay. Do you normally, those of you didn't, do you normally receive letters or email okay from the church?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, that's a little odd. So we will, I'll run that down with Amy. So who was, that was Steve, who didn't, Laurel was a no. Okay.
Jenny's a no.
Jenny, okay.
I think that went out Monday, didn't it, Jim?
It did.
Yeah, went out.
Well, some of the high points are we are welcoming Reverend Nickel. He is now joined. We are updating as well. One thing that's on folks' mind, and we'll come out with an announcement, and Jeremy alluded to it, is we are looking at how we shuffle the budget, especially in light of Beth's departure. One thing we can share with you is we have decided to continue to keep Reverend Dana at 100%. She'll be taking on some of Beth's more ministerial activities. We've also decided not to hire an immediate replacement for Beth. That just seemed inappropriate given that, one, kind of our budgetary cycle unknowns this year, as well as starting with a brand new settled minister in 10 months or so. We thought it was more appropriate to give them the chance to evaluate the staff at that time. Those are a couple of the highlights on that front. Another one, there's been a lot of traffic around. People are asking about how we're handling live interaction considering COVID and what we're doing there. And we mentioned the COVID task force. So they've got some preliminary recommendations. That team was led up by Whitney, Alan, John, Amy, and forgetting. I don't know, Alan, did you want to maybe just, Robin, thank you. Did you want to give folks just a quick highlight of what you guys are recommending?
Well, we've taken a fairly conservative approach in that we started with the state guidelines, especially for worship institutions, which are pretty conservatively written. We wanted to make sure that we were protecting ourselves from the coronavirus, but at the same time, making it possible to have gatherings that were sanctioned by the church. And we've made the assumption that it's going to be risky to do those indoors. So we're pretty much saying that they need to be out of doors. So we've got a tentative checklist that if someone wants to organize and sponsor an outside event that's sanctioned by the church, there's a list of things that they need to take into account, and they need to have a representative that initials each of those things and gives assurance that they have taken them into account. And I feel like after today's sermon that we need to coordinate our concerns about the coronavirus very closely with the kinds of activities that Reverend Jeremy would like to have us do that maybe are things that we haven't anticipated doing and that are creative and we need to think of. And so we need to make sure that our coronavirus policies fit and make those things possible and try to keep them as safe as possible.
That's a good point. And we've shared your preliminary recommendations, and now that he's on board, and we're going to be discussing this at the next board meeting in a week. So, and for the others on the call, so we will be sending out those guidelines. Don't need to try to digest everything Ellen said and explain kind of what we are doing. So thank you for sharing that, Ellen. Ginny, yeah.
Yeah, I just looked at the letter that was sent out on the 31st, and the announcement of this particular type of meeting is in the very last paragraph. So I think people may have missed it in that letter, but I did receive it.
Thanks. And that, yeah, that's why I called it out today. And I think our intention is that we really want to really do this every other week so that it's timely as things happen. We recognize folks are busy and may or may not miss it or may miss a week. So it's going to be accessible. So yeah, one of the things too, I don't think it's mentioned in there, but we did form a communications kind of subcommittee within the board, and then even within the church, Amy is taking on a role to really drive communications because given that we have less frequent interactions, it's really easy to miss communication. And you know, marketing professionals will tell us you got to send a message 6 times before people register it. So we're trying to take that to heart and err on the side of over communicating when we can. Yeah, Steve.
Yeah, I found it now that I see the date, and I could look back through, and it was about welcoming Reverend Nichols. So sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. Okay, well, good that we don't have a fundamental communication problem. That's the starting point. Great. Any other questions? Do I need to call on anybody? I can't imagine Fred and Barb aren't thinking about something they'd like to know. Go ahead, Chris.
Hey, Jim, I was just going to add one thing that with Beth's leaving us, Beth was an important liaison to staff link to many committees. And so that one of the things I think it's worth keeping in mind is with fewer staff resources, I think it's more, we're hoping that people will volunteer more, that we can build up some teams that may not have that many people, and that will be kind of just a recharging of volunteers, because there's no shortage of work to be done. And as we work through what Reverend Jeremy was describing and looking at what are the things that we need to keep doing, and things that maybe go to the back burner just based on priorities, and we'll be looking for people to volunteer. So keep your ears open. I'm trying to read faces and see if folks are interested in doing that. So let us know that you're interested, and let us know what kinds of things you're interested in doing, special passions or talents that you have, things that really get you jazzed. We'd love to tap into that. Steve?
Yes, perfect tie-in. I'm trying to fill Janet's very large shoes now in helping to coordinate the worship team. And looking at the schedule, we have a lot of openings specifically for people that would be willing or interested in doing a chalice lighting. As Reed demonstrated, it can be as unstructured as you'd like, although there is a time limit. And several of you are on my kind of wish list for that, so you may be getting an email from me, but just let me know if you want to volunteer. We'd love to have a backlog of people that would be willing to step in there. I see your hand, Fred. And there also are tech responsibilities, being Zoom host and usher, to post the various links and stuff in the chat box, and also do what Jim did here in organizing the breakout sessions. So you are all welcome to join the team, as it were.
Thanks, Steve, and thank you for heading that up. I think it's I've noticed it's become even more critical, the amount of orchestration and things to do with the service now that they're online, and opportunities, I think, as Jeremy alluded to. So I saw Barbara originally, and then Fred, and then Hilton and Jenny. So let's go in that order.
I think I was just scratching.
Oh.
Actually, Steve, I was going to send you an email this afternoon. I'll do it right here. I'd really like to do the chalice lighting next week because it marks the entrance to my 54th year of membership.
Wow.
Wow.
The Sunday after Labor Day tradition.
Good.
And we'll talk about those other things. There's some other stuff in that note.
Hey, Barbara. Yeah.
Hi. I want to thank you all so much for all that you've been doing and managing and keeping things going that the rest of us don't even know about. So thank you, bless you, and deep gratitude.
Well, we appreciate that. There is a lot of behind the scenes work, not just from the board, but the staff has been incredibly busy, as have all the committee members and chairs. So it is sort of the cumulative efforts of all of us, but we appreciate that. Thanks. And we'll be sure to extend that. Thank you.
Is that the unknowns unknowns?
Yes.
Hey, Jenny. Yes.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
So I had a couple of comments. One about communication. I think the difficulty with the messages that are being sent out is they're too long and they have too many different messages in one email. And I rather get an email every day and have it be short and to the point than once a week and have me have to figure out which things are of interest to me. Two, in terms of volunteering, as Steve Todd said, I've seen the request for people to volunteer as ushers or whatever. I can't remember what else it said. And again, I saw the message, but it didn't have enough information that it made me say, oh, I could do that. Mm-hmm. It didn't have enough description. It just had the title. So I saw usher, I thought, who needs ushers? We're not in church.
Okay.
I think that for things you want to volunteer, and I'd say the same thing to Chris, asking people to volunteer for their passion basically gets nothing done. I think once the board with our new minister decides what the church's directions are, it's much easier to ask people to volunteer for a specific something than a nebulous nothing.
Good points. Yeah, we'll definitely, we are going to look at the frequency. That was a catch up from probably a quarter's worth of information. So it was a bit long, but your point's well taken. And even that's part of why Amy's kind of running point on it. We have some channels. We want to keep the channels consistent so we're not hitting people from too many directions, but using those well. And you've noticed one of those, it's very short little blurbs, and we'll try to make use of that format when we can. And then noted on the effective asks for information. That's a really good point. Barb.
I would hope that once it's figured out that you let us know which staff is responsible for what.
Yes. Right.
So if we have a question or concern, we don't waste someone's time when we need to talk to Dana versus Amy or whatever. Or
that's a great ask. One neat thing to let you guys know that Dana's really spearheaded this, but the staff has put together a RACI chart, and I don't know if any of you are familiar with that from management. Who's responsible, who's ultimately accountable, who's consulted, and who's informed. So within the staff and the board, they've worked that through the entire list of what it takes to keep the church running. So it'd be a pretty easy kind of distillation of that, so that hey, I've got a question on membership, or someone asked me about worship, who do I go to there, et cetera. I need access to the building and so forth. So that's a good point. Chris, I saw you taking notes. Are you? Okay. I filled my buffer of 3 things to remember.
Great feedback. This is why we're doing this. Thank you so much.
So Jim, if you maybe you've already answered this, has the board thought about having an outdoor service with social distancing sometime? Or maybe it's not possible.
Yeah, you might not have been on when we talked about the COVID recommendations. So we have a task force that's put them together, and the short answer is worship is almost impossible to pull off given our staffing. There's a lot of things going on. One is the space we'd be required even outdoor, but if you start thinking about managing the traffic, you've got to have restrooms available, you know, and if you wanted to try to manage that in and out of the building, that's a whole nother issue. Or then we're looking at getting porta potties, and then we have some starting requirements where we want to assure, you know, accessibility and those who aren't comfortable or safe doing that have an alternative. So now you've got, how do you either have to run 2 services or somehow video and stream an outdoor, anyway, so you get the idea, right? So
yeah,
the recommendation is to first move to smaller group items where we can safely get together, you know, track who's there for contact tracing purposes, but keep worship online for the time being.
Sure.
Yeah, another problem with it having a service outside is being able to hear. You really need to have a sound system outside, which impacts the neighborhood, and you need all kinds of permission to do that kind of thing.
And it gets really complicated when you consider that if we were doing it on our property, the people that would be irritated by a speaker system are in the city, whereas we're in the county.
Yes.
Different ordinances would apply.
Exactly. Complications.
Actually, the sanctuary group had a very successful outdoor meeting in the park over by Eisenhower School a week ago. There were 7 of us.
Oh.
We were well spaced and we could hear everything that was going on.
Well, speaking of that, we passed by Avalon last night, and they had a huge gathering underneath their solar panels with a speaker. And I doubt they do anything on Sunday morning. I don't know whether, but again, it's probably logistically too difficult.
Well, that's a really good point though, Reed. I don't know that our thinking went outside of our own physical space. There could be.
Yeah, you wouldn't have the sound issues over there, and they have plenty of shaded space. So,
well, that's something I know was, you know, like Jeremy's talking about, we're going to start reimagining, but we'll kind of throw that into the hopper and make sure we're not too narrowly focused on our immediate resources and thinking about what we could potentially rent or use. That's a really good point.
I think we've all experienced that it's nice to be in the presence of real human beings.
Yes, it is.
Not that you're not real.
3-dimensional.
No, 3D is different for sure. Great.
I had a quick question.
Yeah, Kate.
Yeah, I was wondering, would it be possible to have smaller groups meeting at UUCB, perhaps over a certain topic or a spiritual topic or something, just maybe smaller groups?
Yeah, I think the recommendations are saying that's okay, initially outside, and then I think they're going to reassess as things develop, and then the weather changes, whether and how and if we do that inside.
So that would be okay outside.
Yeah, and we're trying to get those out real quickly, and just, you know, FYI, I know Fred, you mentioned it, and Diane Ewing is involved with the Circle Suppers. People have been kind of doing things on the side, which technically we're going to add some requirements on, because they're not, if they're church sanctioned activities. We appreciate you all doing them very safely, but there's certain things we need to do to, such as keep track of who's attending and making sure you're following the guidelines. So I know the team's working on you know, short checklists and bullet items that will get distributed. But so short answer to you, Kate, yes, that's going to happen. Longer answers, there'll be some instructions forthcoming on that pretty soon.
Okay, sounds good.
Jim, I have just a little input about the Soul Matters group. We talked about being able to start up again in September, as we have always during the church year. And one group will be starting online, but I'm kind of holding out for starting up in the building. So we did talk about using, the large spaces that we have there and having a group of 6 to 8 people, maybe requiring masks.
Yes.
For the startup. I don't know whether that makes sense, but I think particularly for that small group ministry, it's much, much more satisfying to have the people in the room. And we wouldn't be wanting to do it outdoors. We would want to do it inside the building. Okay. So I don't know if that was brought to the committee. I don't know if anybody.
I don't know if that specific example was, and that's a good data point though. I know, so these haven't been codified right now, they're recommendations. So we are discussing that in the board meeting next week, but that's a good, good data point. Thank you, Sharon.
One of the complications that immediately arises when something is held inside the building is access to restrooms and the rules about cleaning the restroom after it's used. And so, we have Ingrid and her family to think about, and we have preschool to think about. And if we use any restroom in the building, we have to clean it. So we have to become much more self-aware about little details like that.
Yes. Alan, doesn't that also apply to rooms in which the meetings are held, not just the restrooms?
Yes.
I'm thinking, yes. Okay.
Like surface cleaning, for example. Yes.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you.
I just want to jump in with a comment. I've had my hand up a couple of times. Just I can totally appreciate the desire to go back into the building. I think we could take some lessons from what they're doing at local farmers markets. There's an RSVP system generally to get in. Boundaries are set up so you walk a certain direction. There's sanitizing encouraged as you come in. There's a lot that needs to be done to do that. And you definitely would want to have a sign-up sheet for contact tracing. I think as an organization, we need to balance our need to do that with what we as a church can do to minister to the group at large. And with fall coming, I just have concerns that we spread ourselves a little too thin trying to do face-to-face without following all the rules.
Well, I think there's more, I have more concern because we have Ingrid in the building. I think we have much more, we have to be much more careful than we would otherwise. We just really can't have any chance that they get infected.
Sorry, I've got, normally we keep the other fellowship rooms shuffling, but they've had an extended stay, so people are messaging me, but I told them to bounce in here and we'll reassign. So we're just gonna play this loosely. I know there's a lot of interest on COVID. I was going to ask if I could put Nicole Ball on the spot, and if you had anything you wanted to say or could say about the search. I know you guys asked everyone to take a survey, or if you can just refer people to how you're keeping everybody up to date. I think that's of interest to quite a few folks.
Sure. Let's see. So I believe the survey is closed now, but if you still want to participate, you can email us because we want as many responses as possible. Our next step is to have small group meetings, which we're calling cottage meetings. We're still putting together how we're going to gather people for those meetings. The most obvious option is to drop in on, for example, the board meetings, the finance committee meetings, the already existing groups that are still meeting, and talk to those people. But of course, we're also going to reach out to everyone in the community, whether you're part of an official group or not, and give you an opportunity to give us your feedback on the new minister. if you can give me a second, I'm going to find the email address that you can use to contact us about the survey or the meetings or anything else. Let's see, in terms of communication, we are putting out at least monthly communications in the email blasts that you're receiving, just generally from the church. And as the search ramps up, those communications will become more specific about what we're doing and also more frequent, probably. Certainly, as we get the cottage meetings ramped up, we'll talk to you more about those opportunities for being part of that. Is there anything else, Jim?
No, that was all. I think that's helpful. And you guys have a location on the website where you've been updating folks. I just saw you there and thought it may be of interest. So there's a lot more people back in. I had messaged those in breakout rooms that we're going to reshuffle now if you'd like to stay on. So I'm going to do that. And just like before, if you want to stay in and talk to the board again, you can not join or join and exit your room. So just stand by for a second. Oh, it looks like it's going to take a minute to close those.
Is this a good time for Janet and Bob to do a plug for their project?
Yeah. Although the recipient is on this chat, so Reverend Jeremy,
close your ears.
Close your ears. So we've been getting a lot of photos and text. Any comments you want to say about that? It's a welcome digital photo album for Reverend Jeremy, so he can see our lovely faces.
Okay, and I'm putting it together, but I need you to send me photographs. I know a number of you have, and such, but a number haven't. So
I'm sending the email.
Okay,
So I'm putting the email address in the chat, and it's also in the announcements.
Great.
Well, I'm going to repeat my announcement too while you're working on that, Jim. Working with the ministry, or the worship team, our calendar is kind of open right now in terms of volunteers for various roles. And so I'm making a blanket announcement, and I'll also make some personal requests or invitations for people who would be willing to do a chalice lighting or get some training on how to be a Zoom host or a Zoom usher.
Okay.
Those are things we need. If you want to send me an email right away, stevetodd2@gmail.com. Very simple, stevetodd2. That'd be great. Otherwise, let the office know, or we'll start to get a list of people so that each new worship leader Sunday by Sunday doesn't have to work so hard to find volunteers. It's a little bit daunting sometimes.
One thing I want to mention while we have this wonderful group of people here, which is a lot of pertinent people, just in our breakout session, there was Monica who mentioned that she was wondering about the continuation of Starting Point. Does anybody know where that's going?
Oh no.
Chris, do you know? So Jeremy and Beth have been furiously mind melding in the last week. So I'm sure Starting Point has been discussed. I'm not sure who's going to be the lead on it from staff and how that's going to be supported. So who asked the question, Charmin? Well,
it was Monica. She's right here on this breakout on our main session.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's Monica.
So I think we'll have to get back to you on the specifics on that. I don't know unless anyone's on who does.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
So
Great. So I just quickly, I reshuffled the rooms. If you want to go back and just have open fellowship, there's a few rooms with folks in them. Otherwise, the lobby here, we've been hosting a Your Board is Listening session. So
a quick question.
Go for it.
Okay. I was curious if the preschool, if we are renting to the preschool right now.
Yes, we are. So they've they've been going through a few iterations with the state on licensing, but they've expressed their interest to continue to rent from us with some changes. I believe they've never been able to hire someone who can handle the younger age kids. So they're also looking to change their registration. So there's a few things in play there. We haven't formally signed an agreement because we want to make sure that they are licensed to operate before we do so. Part of those terms involves some financial aspects to it. They've struggled in the past, and we're working out how they can work out the financials with us, including past due and staying on track in the future.
Okay. So there are children in the building now, or I mean, during the week.
Yes, there are.
But there are no adults, so that's okay.
No, well, Ingrid, I think is there.
Ingrid's there.
Yes.
Ingrid
Amy,
would be an adult.
I have to say goodbye. I have another Zoom meeting.
Oh,
Diane, thank you.
yeah, I will get a picture to you, Bob, on the faces.
That thing we're doing in secret.
Yeah,
So-
thank
so
you for
we can-
doing that.
We can go to those breakout rooms now, right?
Yeah, you can. You should have
Yeah, it's at the bottom.
Okay.
Join
Yep.
breakout room. Okay.
All right.
I know we lost Alan, but I wanted to put in a plug for the group that the task force that Whitney has been leading. They got off to a rockin' start. When you start, even the things we're talking about now, the complexity of this subject is really amazing. And so I think they've met 3 times, Jim? 3 times?
At least, I think probably 4, yeah.
And it put together, did research, put together a lot of really good information in a really short time, but solid work. And so you'll be hearing more about that. That'll clearly be one of the priorities that we'll be talking about. How do we church safely? And it's not a simple question.
Although if we could somehow stumble into a Grateful Dead enclave in the forest, that would be fun.
That would be great.
Dude.
What a long, strange trip it's been.
Good. Any other thoughts that come to mind? Anything anyone would like to find out about what we've been doing?
Yeah, I guess I haven't heard any kind of update on our financial situation since Beth sent that email saying, please fill the gap.
Ah, great. That was also in the letter I mentioned. So the stewardship group did a great job, and through our congregation's generosity, we exceeded that goal. Sorry, I got some background noise. So the goal was 27,000. That was approximately the gap, and we have received cash in hands $30,000 with commitments a little bit larger than that. So thank you all, those who participated. That's very helpful. So we don't have to tap reserve funds. Now that said, with Beth leaving, we have, and as Jeremy mentioned, now we've got some rebudgeting to do based on priorities. So that's something the staff and ourselves will be working on. And then depending on where we feel that comes out, we'll come back, either with a recommendation or if it needs to be approved by the congregation. If it's material enough, we would have a special meeting to do that.
Jim, what is our total budget? The
I don't know that off the top of my head.
27 you're saying was
That was the gap.
That was the gap.
But what's the total?
It's on the order of, it's between 300 and 350. This is from memory.
Yeah.
So
Off the top of my head, I don't recall.
but along those lines, one of the other things we are making sure is we're trying to post all information online to members, such as the budget. So I don't have it at my fingertips, but you could go look at the approved budget in the members file information area.
And the Finance Council is going to be, sorry, Heidi, the Finance Council will be providing us with bi-monthly updates of the budget. So we'll be getting that. We should be getting that information soon, and then making sure that y'all are informed about how that's working.
Which represents a little bit tighter management of it. So, as any company, institution, anybody with a budget needs to do, when revenues are less certain as they are in this COVID time, we're recycling very quickly to make sure we don't go too long with a discrepancy. So exclusive of the gap drive, I believe our first month, though, we're ahead of budget, which is good. We often start the year strong and tail off in the end, but from what we are seeing from pledges is strong.
Heidi, Jim, Dave, Steve.
Is there a plan to do anything for Beth? I may have missed this if it's been out there already, but we're going to miss her a lot. And of course, if these were normal times, we'd probably have a big party and a cake for her and things. Is she already on her way out, or is she dovetailing with Jeremy at this point, or what's the plan?
Beth's last day is the 8th, which is Tuesday. She has been among those on staff who've been doing Vulcan mind melds with Jeremy. He talked about the fire hose. I guess that's it. So making sure that he's clear on all of the things that Beth had on her to-do list, all the staff links that she had. And that's going to be part of the next subject of how do we look at all these things? How do we decide which ones are the priority, and what resources will it take to support them, and who's going to do what? So that's our next task.
Do we have any plans to, I know there was something about sending her cards or whatever to thank her.
Yes, and Dana, I believe, created, and I think it's in this past week's messenger, she created a digital card for people to add their greetings. And some folks have, including ourselves, have sent cards to the church that Beth will be able to pick those up if you want to do something, personally.
Okay.
And you may have noted too, just one quick note, unlike past ministerial change, we're not precluded from staying in contact with her. So if you have a relationship with her, and if she's, and you want to maintain it, you can do that, no problem, and stay in touch. I don't know actually where she's going to land. I mean, she's going seminary full time, but whether that will be staying here physically in Denver or elsewhere, or if it even matters these days. So you can ask her. But yeah, please fill out the card out, as she would appreciate that. And she was really driving a lot of things behind the scenes that we benefited from.
I just had a reflection on the last 30 minutes with you all, and this is really great. I like the breakout rooms after the service, even though I'm an introvert and sometimes am initially reluctant. This is great. And so for those who are programming this sort of thing, just a church folks hangout, maybe structured with some topics or foci, but maybe just hanging out with a little bit larger group, and everybody's been polite about not talking over one another. This is nice. I like it.
It's a good point. I think it's been a different forum, and we could, wouldn't necessarily have to be board focused, but a little bit different group. Trying to just respect the order here. Joe M., I saw your hand flash before Jenny and then Diana. Yeah, go ahead. You're on mute. You're gonna have to unmute yourself.
Thank you. I would be interested to know where the thinking, which direction the board is leaning about replacing Beth with a new person, or not replacing her and dividing her duties up. And that may have been covered before, and I missed it.
It was, but to recap, we're not gonna replace her. And that's our initial recommendation. With the new minister coming on, we thought it was more appropriate for them to assess the staffing situation with respect to assistant ministry and administrative membership type support and otherwise. And looking at her tasks, some of them naturally might flow to Dana, but it's really the staff's job to cover those areas. So they've been working to figure out how those tasks get realigned, which ones Dana takes on, which ones Jeremy can, which ones Amy might, and then what falls through. One area of note, you know, we although we're not in it, our building isn't just running itself. So Tom's been putting a lot of time, and Beth really has, and even back to Kelly, there's been an inordinate amount of time from staff to manage the facilities. So, you know, one consideration is taking something that Beth was driving maybe completely off staff's plate and spending a little bit of our budget surplus to up our facilities folks. A Gage, I believe is their name, but have somebody, maybe we were under investing historically in that. So that's just an example of something that might get redistributed outside, but then the rest is probably going to get put within the mix. And like Jeremy said, we're going to look really hard at, you know, let's be more focused, do a better job on fewer things than spread ourselves too thin. Great question.
One more comment. Sure. I missed it. I was in a very interesting chat room, but I love the opportunity of being able to ask the board questions. And I wonder if that could become maybe a once a month post service.
It's scheduled.
The board isn't too worn out already.
No, we're not yet. Chris is trying, but right now we're planning to do it bi-weekly. And if it keeps the momentum, we certainly thought we discussed monthly, but if you miss that one time a month, then you might, you know, not hit it for a while. So it's really not a lot to ask of our board members. Our goal is to have 2 to 3 be able to attend this, so we don't get ganged up on too much. And we're gonna keep it going as long as folks are interested.
It's a wonderful way to keep the congregation engaged.
Yes.
That wasn't possible when we were offline and meeting in person. It's sort of, you heard something by the way, or maybe you had, maybe you didn't know what was going on at all. This is very cool. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. Good. That's our hope.
I would add a quick plug for those who weren't here earlier. We talked about all the things that that Beth has been involved with, and that will be really needing to have an increase in more volunteerism, and I think that's an amazing way to stay engaged. And Tom and I were members down at the church in Parker. They didn't have a facility, and so every Sunday, you know, we grabbed materials, and it was called some assembly required, and then the church, everything was taken down and put in storage. So that was an every day, every week event. But those kinds of activities, even if they take a virtual shape, are a great way to build community. And so as we do this work that Jeremy described to look at what the priorities are, there will be opportunities for things that may have been handled by a staff member before, that we could get more volunteers re-engaged. So stay tuned for that. I think there's a lot of benefits to it, and it might be a little challenging doing it virtually, but if any group of people can figure it out, it's in our church.
Mm-hmm. One more quick question. Is Amy full-time or part-time?
She's full-time.
Thank you.
Jenny, you're trying to jump in there. Go for it.
So I wanted to build on what Steve Todd said, but I can't remember the exact wording anymore because I'm old and I forgot. But I'm wondering if the week that the board is not speaking, we could also have 2 choices of breakout and have some of our committees do this kind of session.
Oh, that's a good idea.
That would be cool.
So that we'd have the opportunity to either socialize, but maybe learn more about what some committee is doing, ask questions, and maybe the committee would get, or the ministry, not the committee, maybe the ministry would get more volunteers that way because it'd be more obvious.
Whitney's standing here saying, not the COVID task force, please.
That is such a good idea.
Staying off screen for a purpose.
Rolling already.
That's a great
such
idea.
A good idea.
You know, Steve, as our worship chair, I know he has meetings, and I can tell him a little technically what it seemed to be involved here, but I think that sounds like a great idea. You could rotate different ministries or committees hosting
So, Jim,
particular breakout.
how challenging it is as a Zoom host to have, like, let's say the week we have bi-weekly board is listening, and then what Jenny was saying, it's a great idea. The other week, the committees are listening. Is it challenging as a Zoom host to know, like, we have like 5 committees and then make the breakout rooms for those committees? Is that something that a host can do?
With some training, probably I can relay my experience to that group, and it's not without a little bit of funkiness. As you noticed, when I took everyone out of the breakup groups, this room got really big.
Yeah.
So we've talked about other ideas like hosting a completely separate Zoom call, but my thinking is that's another step that's going to make it hard to happen. And then I look like some folks like to be part of this and then bounce into rooms. So
I see.
my guess is we'll figure out here and just deal with a little bit of sloppiness and call it good.
I'd love
So
to
just to make clear, my recommendation, it would be not to have 5 committees on one Sunday. It would be to have one committee like we're doing here and socializing for the rest of the group. I think that's more manageable.
And my thought was it doesn't have to be on Sunday morning. I mean, we could do this on a Wednesday evening, just have a church folks hang out on a Wednesday evening.
And yet this is a built-in audience. We're already here. So it's more attractive to stay than making a new plan, than making a new engagement.
So I'd like to jump in at this point. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Great. I think so many of these ideas are wonderful. I really like the idea of, especially I was actually excited for 2 reasons. One, to hear Jeremy speak, and I thought he was fantastic. And then also to know that this was an opportunity to really hear from the board. So I really like that format. And then adding to it the possibility of, throughout the hearing and being able to participate in what would be a ministry meeting, I think is a great idea to really, one, reestablish and maintain contact with all the different people in our congregation. So I absolutely applaud that. And I think it's another way to rethink church, which I'm very excited about. I'm kind of over the idea of having a physical brick and mortar building. I know that may sound sacrilegious to some folks. I mean, there's not that we wouldn't want to have the opportunity to get together physically at some point in the future when obviously it's safe, but I'm less and less attached to the brick and mortar. I mean, there's so many ways we could use our funds and still see one another, be physically with one another, but not necessarily tied to a geographic space in the same way that we are right now. And so I'm kind of thinking about that. And just from 2 cents worth from my point of view, I think kind of congregating these types of discussions beyond the Sunday service on Sunday in conjunction with the service really helps, because I have, and I'm sure most people have, many, many other Zoom calls. And yet I'm willing to really, dedicate a good portion of Sunday to church related stuff in addition to the sermon itself. It helps me keep track of things.
Definitely. And I also, after the service, it somehow really energizes for UUCB. It just really, doesn't it, Diana? It just so gets you going that, yes, it motivates you and you're ready. And so after service, I do think it's probably the best time to have a committee is listening, board is listening, because it's just really energizes me for sure.
Right.
I do think, Diana, as COVID's making just about everything in the world rethink how it's done things, we're doing the same. And I've heard a lot of folks say, is there any reason we wouldn't continue, or we should continue Zoom and have virtual services? And you look at all our folks who can, I mean, literally my folks who are joining from Wisconsin and others around, even someone in Denver who used to live here. So all great things. And it was funny, Dana had mentioned to me once, she's like, yeah, if you look at televangelists or even now the internet evangelists, those congregations are 90% online versus the 10,000 even that show up at the stadium. So clearly there's models and it works, and it lets us reach more people with our message, which I think is really valuable.
Yes.
So
Yes.
good
Well,
point, and
you know,
thank
as
you
a-
for the feedback.
As a member of the Starting Point ministry that Beth organized, what we've seen over the last 6 months is that people who have first experienced the church online and participated that way, they've actually become members.
Mm-hmm.
So we're tapping into it gives us the ability to tap into a segment of our world where coming to physical church on a Sunday morning is maybe not, doesn't fit well with the structure of people's, for some people, of their lives.
Yes.
So it really opens up the possibility to be able to attract an additional cohort.
Yes, my sister is attending from Las Vegas because she doesn't know anybody at the UU Church in Las Vegas. She's attracted to my experience, the UUCB, but she's too shy to go to the Las Vegas church. She doesn't know anybody. But here, she just joins in on these Zoom calls, is completely hands off, and she loves it.
That's fantastic.
That's great. Hey, Diana, since you mentioned Starting Point, someone had asked earlier in a Zoom group.
Yes, I heard.
Oh, did you have an answer, or is there an answer?
I do not have an answer.
Okay.
Beth was really the energizing element of that. And the Starting Point ministry, myself, Robin, Dan, a couple other people at different times, really supported her in that. But we haven't heard, or I haven't heard,
Okay.
I should say, what the next iteration of that will be, or who will be involved. We had really great turnout. I mean, these meetings after church on a Sunday were twice a month. It gave people an opportunity to basically participate in 2 sessions that not only gave kind of an overview of the denomination and our church, but really opened up a lot of good discussion in terms of what our belief systems were personally and congregationally. So they were exciting events. They were very helpful events in terms of pulling people into the experience.
I know that was really high on her list of things that she did. So I'm certain she and Jeremy discussed it, and we'll make sure that ministry and then the board is supporting as we need to, and whatever help the committee needs as well, our ministry. So.
Hey, Diana. So when Abby was doing Starting Points, I participated in hers.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of my Starting Point, Abby was looking for people to train. Do you know anything about that? Did she find any people?
So I think the 2 experiences that the different, or the format that Abby followed was closely followed the new member introductory series that Kelly put together. The Starting Point that Beth pulled together and structured was actually not extremely different from that, but it was a very different. It was less informational, less in kind of conveying information about the governance of the church, the religious origins of the denomination, and it flipped it, and it became less top down and more personal up, so that a lot of the Starting Point material encouraged people to look at their own belief system and to see. So I don't see the two ways of putting that experience together were not in conflict. They're just very different. And I think some of the volunteers that Abby sought out became the core of the starting group ministry. Barb Richards was also part of that. So So there was that overlap, but the overall structure of the way Beth presented the experience, I think, was different from Abby's approach.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Okay, we're muted.
Yeah,
We're going to say bye for now. Thank you,
Hey, guys,
everyone.
thank you.
just to let you all know that the greeters are concerned about maintaining our contacts with the new people that are coming through. I saw at least 5 new names or faces on today's service, so we need to keep that piece of it going too.
And it's a little less captive, right? If they just show up, we're relying on them to enter the form, whereas they have to sneak by you in physical. So that's something we should think about. If there's a way, as we notice those, we can maybe reach out to them on individual chat or something. But
If
we
they
can
go to
brainstorm some thoughts. Yeah, that's a good
Well,
point.
usually
I
we
think
end up in that chat room. When we end up in it, it's all of us. Joe?
No, I mean the written chat during the service. Like
Yeah.
if you see a new name, we can send them a link to tell us more about yourself or welcome them or something. I don't know exactly how. Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to think about that, but that's a good point.
You know, there's some people that don't like all the verbiage and chat that goes on during the service because normally we don't talk during a chalice lighting. We don't talk during a sermon. Is there some way that individuals can turn that off so it's not popping up?
If you don't click, you don't get it.
Right.
Well, but it can be intrusive because it'll pop up too. So I don't.
That's
it's
true.
Probably something we need to.
If there's a way to have people have control, you need to let them know, because on the Wednesday Zoom, there's quite a few people that do not like the interruption.
So I think if you just click on the chat box, it does not appear on your screen. So it's really in control of the person who is watching.
No.
But maybe tell people that at the beginning of every service.
It is for mine.
Well, that pop-up box it's still there, and there are people that don't like it. Right?
Yeah, well, you can do it across the board, and we've had a lot of people say they actually really like that. So we're probably a little bit split on it, but this seems like a great thing for me to put to our new ministry lead, Steve Todd, and have him opine and get input on.
I have a point on that. I used to have a boss who had a big poster on his wall and it said, do both. And I'd say, do both. That some services you say, this is a special service where chat is restricted ABC. And this service, we're gonna let chat run wild because there are people like me, like moi, who love your little chats and your comments.
I love it.
So I'd say I vote for do both.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're gonna go. Love you guys. See ya.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Yeah, let's wrap.
Yeah, this has been great input.
Oh,
So Joe has been
had
trying
her
to say
hand up.
something here.
Jim, Joe's had her hand
Oh,
up.
that's what I was just gonna say. Go ahead, Joe.
It's been going along in the back of my mind during this conversation, the idea of having not only twice a month talk to your board meetings, but also the same thing with different committees. I think somebody touched on the idea that's a way of developing member engagement, but I haven't taken my thoughts very far this way, but as a way of rethinking what church means and what the community is. I mean, when we had a physical church, you went to church, you did the thing there, and then you went home. And other people did the work that made the church go. So it was sort of an us and them. But if these online talk to your committees and stuff succeed, it might be a way to expand the general sense of what the church is. It's much more than going to the service and going home. It's about what are we all doing together, and it's our whole community.
Yeah.
Anyway, I haven't carried that very far, but I think it's really exciting as a way of
Food for thought. Yeah, this opens up new ways of thinking about these paradigms for sure.
Yeah.
Yes, Miss Sagittarius.
Yes, Sag, bud. if we're going to do the board, to listen to the board and or / committees every other week or whatever, which is great, somehow you still need to let Fred and I welcome the people who don't, that are new, that are visitors, which is what we've been doing every Sunday. And that didn't happen today, which is fine. But that's one way we capture these new people. So that needs to be in your script somehow, that we're in the main room, willing to greet them.
What, we're into technical stuff, but one thing can work is if you make me a co-host, then I can go to the chat rooms and see where these people are.
Okay.
And then we can, we can target those names that we don't recognize and go to those chat rooms.
But they have to be invited, or they may just not
Yeah,
get coffee.
Yeah, we still have to invite them.
Understood. We'll have to play with some of this technically and see, but I think that's a good point. We'll have to figure out. Ideally, we'd have different topical rooms that we could invite or join, and that might be a little difficult to make happen.
The greeters table, something like that. Okay. Adios.
Thank you all for being here today.
Thank you. Good to see you all. Thank you.